Hello and welcome to Deep Cuts, a show that explores the good, the bad, and the gory in all your favorite horror movies. I'm your host, Matthew Bolton, and today we're traveling to the fictional town of Warren Valley, Ohio, to explore 2007's horror comedy, Trick or Treat. The film was written and directed by Michael Dougherty, making his directorial debut, and it features a non-linear series of stories that all take place on Halloween night. The only detail loosely connecting the stories is Sam, a peculiar trick-or-treater who's dressed in pajamas and a burlap sack, who pretty much goes around enforcing the rules of Halloween. The movie was based on an animated short film by Michael Dougherty, which he made back in the 90s. It was called Season's Greetings, and it actually introduced Sam to the world. Trick or Treat ran into theatrical distribution problems when Warner Brothers and Legendary Pictures just couldn't settle on a date to release the film. Originally set to come out in October of 2007, it would take 2 years for Trick or Treat to be released, eventually direct to DVD. I remember waiting for this film to come out in 2007 and wondered where the hell it was when it never came out. I would keep seeing reviews coming from private screenings from all over the place, and eventually 2 years later, finally got to see this movie. And just how well did it stand up to all the hype? Well, let's get right down to the Halloween goodness and find out. The movie opens with a great classic black and white safety film strip warning about the dangers of Halloween, which opens up to the first vignette of the film, a couple returning home after a long Halloween night. The robot Emma blows out a jack-o'-lantern and her husband Henry tries to stop her, telling her it's against tradition to blow it out so early. A POV shot watches from across the street, then moves in for a closer look after the couple reaches their front porch, noticing now the dark pumpkin along the way. Emma wants to take down all the decorations since her mother will be visiting tomorrow and will apparently die of the sight of Halloween decorations still up on November 1st. Henry wants to get right down to business and makes a pouty face when Emma isn't feeling in the mood, and this guilt trips her into changing her mind. Emma stays outside for a bit to take down the ridiculous amount of decorations while Henry goes inside to get heated up. Like, come on, is she really gonna take down all those decorations right now? Like, what time is it even? And why does your family even hate Halloween so much? While taking down decorations, Emma is frightened by someone standing across the street watching her. This turns out just to be a great misdirect, and it's just another Halloween patron heading out for some mischief. When she turns around to shake it off, she's then attacked by an unseen force in a sheet. Henry wakes up in the bedroom when Emma screams, but thinks it's the sound coming from the couple's porno warm-up tape and falls right back to sleep. Back outside, Emma tussles with the unseen entity in the sheet. After rolling out onto the sidewalk in front of some trick-or-treaters, a half-chewed jack-o'-lantern lollipop cuts her throat, scaring the shit out of the trick-or-treaters, and they run away. Emma's lifeless body is dragged back into her front yard underneath the bloody sheet. Henry wakes up and notices Emma is still outside and goes to check on her. Once outside, Henry looks around at some of the now more realistic-looking Halloween decorations and discovers Emma, propped up as a scarecrow decoration with the same jack-o'-lantern lollipop shoved in her mouth. Henry screams take us into the movie's opening credits, which foreshadow some of the things coming our way, in comic book form. Next, we jump to earlier in the night where we see a young boy peeping in on some scantily clad women in dressing rooms, putting on their Halloween costumes for the big Halloween celebration. The little boy in this scene also plays the character of Sam, so you get a nice little lollipop-laden Easter egg right here. The women he's peeping on are Danielle, Mary, and Janet. Danielle's sister, Lori, played by Anna Paquin, steps out of her dressing room, not feeling the overly sexual vibes that Danielle and the rest of the girls are feeling. Danielle invites the cashier to their bonfire party in the woods, and he accepts, saying that he's going to be off by 11, which is absolutely impossible on Halloween night in this town. Later, Danielle gives Lori a hard time since she's a 22-year-old virgin, and Janet and Mary join in, asking two nearby news crew members to be their dates for the bonfire party. And a few beers later, they decide to leave Lori alone in the town to find a date, then to meet up with them later in the woods. Meanwhile, difficult kid Charlie, played by Brett Kelly of Bad Santa fame, walks down the sidewalk smashing jack-o'-lanterns. When he stops on a porch to take the remaining candy in the bowl, marked help yourself to one candy, like a douche, he's confronted by the homeowner, Principal Wilkins, played by Dylan Baker. Principal Wilkins asks Charlie to sit with him a while and tells him stories of Halloween's past and carves a jack-o'-lantern right in front of him. He explains how the rules of Halloween should always be obeyed while Charlie pounds down some of that chocolate. Although Charlie starts to have a bad reaction to the candy he's eating and is reminded of the most important Halloween rule of all.
Always check your candy.
Charlie pukes himself to death and passes out, while Principal Wilkins brings his body inside before being interrupted by the doorbell ringing. He opens the door for some teenage trick-or-treaters who ask for one of his lanterns. He agrees and then gives them all candy. This is also the first time we see Sam, who is also taking some candy before wandering off. Principal Wilkins brings Charlie's body to his backyard where there is a large grave-sized hole and drops Charlie's body inside, on top of another child's body. He begins to bury the bodies, but is continuously interrupted by his super adorable son Billy and his crabby neighbor Mr. Krieg. Oh, and the squirming kid in the bottom of the hole. I love the irony and the fun they have with these series of unfortunate events for Principal Wilkins. Not only is this scene funny, it's also super tense. And not only is his neighbor such a jerk, but his son is the most annoying, cute little kid that just has to get his questions in while his dad is trying to bury these bodies. He's got shit to do, Billy! Principal Wilkins wishes Mr. Krieg a happy Halloween and gets the same reaction most people get nowadays.
Screw you!
Principal Wilkins is finally able to bury the two children in his backyard, and even adds a yard gnome for flair. While making his way back inside, he notices a frantic Mr. Krieg in his house, asking for help. He returns Mr. Krieg's kindness and goes inside just as Mr. Krieg is visibly tackled in his house. Once inside, Principal Wilkins is scared by his persistently annoying son Billy, and the two go down into the basement to carve another jack-o'-lantern. With all clues pointing to certain death for young Billy, the tables are turned when it's revealed that they're actually carving the head of Charlie, and Billy is totally safe in the care of his murderous father. We jump back to the teenage trick-or-treaters Macy, Sarah, and Chip as they stumble upon Mrs. Henderson's Halloween swingers party, where a few of the school's staff are doing some pretty weird shit in the background. The kids quickly get the fuck out of there and meet up with Schrader, who has pulled a few more jack-o'-lanterns for their collection. The group needs more jack-o'-lanterns for their mystery plan, so they go meet up with Rhonda to acquire a few more and decide to bring her along on their adventure, using Schrader to pour on the boyish charm to convince her. This is one thing in the story that never really clicked for me. I could never tell why they had to go around and collect so many lanterns when they could have just gone to Rhonda's house to begin with. I mean, she's got plenty, and she's got master craftsmanship. Meanwhile, at the town's Halloween parade, we catch up with a woman making out with a cloaked figure in an alley. They stop kissing, and the woman sees that she's bleeding, and that the mystery man in the cloak has fangs and is possibly a vampire? She runs out of the alley and into the crowded streets for help, and into the married couple, Emma and Henry, from the film's opening. The woman grabs Emma's arm in hopes of being saved, but Emma believes the woman is just drunk and shrugs it off before walking away. The woman then turns around and gets attacked off screen, and eventually is laid to rest next to a few other drunk partygoers on the ground, watching the goings-on. The masked mystery vampire walks away casually into the night, and we jump to our trick-or-treaters approaching a cliff near a rock quarry, led by Macy. She proceeds to tell the group of a Halloween story, the local town legend about 8 mentally disturbed children wearing freakish Halloween costumes. And they were so disturbed that their embarrassed parents sent them to a school miles outside of town every day to keep them out of sight. But on one fate-filled Halloween, the bus driver takes a different route, passing by Sam along the way. Hey, little buddy! The bus driver drives to the same quarry where our trick-or-treaters are currently standing. Seems the parents were so embarrassed of their children that they actually paid the bus driver to kill them. It would have worked too had it not been for Dracula, who realizes they aren't where they're supposed to be, and he tries to drive the bus home. Unfortunately for everyone, including the bus driver, he only manages to move the bus forward and over the cliff, killing all 8 on board in the process. According to Macy, the bus driver was never heard from again. And back in our current timeline, Macy explains that they needed the 8 jack-o'-lanterns as an offering to the 8 kids who died. 3 of our trick-or-treaters go down the elevator first and send it back up for Rhonda and Chip. As the 2 head down in the elevator, they hear the others screaming and see their lanterns go out. Chip starts to freak out a bit, but Rhonda moves out of the elevator like a boss, telling Chip he'll be fine as long as he doesn't let the last lantern go out. Rhonda stumbles upon the half-sunken bus in the water and sees masks floating. Distracted by the epic view, she's attacked by 2 water-drenched creatures and runs away to find the 3rd creature eating Chip's insides. While trying to run away, Rhonda drops her glasses before blindly slipping and falling into a small ditch, knocking herself out. She comes to and sees that the creatures are standing over her. One of the creatures pulls off a mask, revealing himself to be Schrader, who's done trying to prank the weird girl now that things have gone a little bit too far. He explains to Rhonda that it was just a cruel prank, and he tries to apologize and sits with her to calm her down, while Macy and the others wander back to clean up all their prank stuff. Macy kicks a lit lantern into the water and is feeling unremorseful until she hears whispers and giggles echoing through the mist. Schrader and Rhonda hear the others scream. Schrader, thinking it's just another ruse, leaves Rhonda to go investigate. He runs into the others and they frantically tell him they're not alone down there, as they see the disturbed children crawling towards them in the dark, and they all take off for the elevator. Sarah is snagged right away and dragged back into the fog, never to be heard from again, as the remaining 3 reach the elevator, begging Rhonda to let them in. Rhonda denies their request and takes the lift up, leaving them behind to be devoured by the creepy zombie kids. Rhonda arrives at the top of the quarry where she crosses paths with Sam, who's on his way to check out the fun stuff going on below, and leaves her alone due to the fact that she's a devout Halloween enthusiast. Back at the parade in town, Lori is still looking around for a date with no luck. Danielle calls to tell her that she's got a backup date waiting for Lori at the party. While on the phone, Lori sees the masked mystery vampire from earlier and decides to walk to the bonfire party alone through the woods. As if her costume wasn't on the nose enough, she is stalked by the masked murderer and eventually captured and bitten. At the bonfire party, Danielle and the others worry about Laurie and where she is before a body falls from a tree in Laurie's costume. Upon further inspection, it's the masked man in Laurie's costume, and Laurie enters the party and explains that the man bit her, and Maria removes his fake fangs. Poser. And it turns out that the masked man is a terrified Principal Wilkins. We see that all the dates that the women took to the woods are dead in a nice cool wide shot, and shout out to the bear chilling with a decapitated head on its lap. Marilyn Manson's Sweet Dreams begins to fill the night air as we realize the women are a pack of werewolves in an awesome transformation sequence. Sam creepily watches the feast from one of my favorite frames in the entire movie. Jumping back to even earlier in the night, we catch up with Principal Wilkins' crotchety old neighbor Mr. Krieg, played by Brian Cox, as he and his dog scare off some unsuspecting trick-or-treaters. Krieg seems to hate everything about Halloween, including the candy, as he sits watching Halloween programming on his TV, before burning some old photos in his fireplace. Someone eggs his house and he grabs a bat from the closet to investigate. He goes after the prankster in his backyard, and we see the same scene from earlier with Principal Wilkins burying the kids next door, this time from Mr. Krieg's perspective. Mr. Krieg runs back through his house to discover that his front yard has been covered in jack-o'-lanterns. Before he can destroy any of them, he's drawn back inside because someone is upstairs in his house, and he upgrades his bat for a boomstick before heading upstairs after the intruder. Once upstairs in his room, a pumpkin lights up and illuminates the writing all over his wall, frightening Krieg enough to let his guard down as he's stabbed in the back of the leg by a razor blade and a candy bar. Sam crawls out from under the bed, and he's ready to keep using that bloody candy bar from hell on Krieg. Krieg manages to make it to his feet, but not for long, as he falls down the stairs covered in loose candy and razor blades. And you thought stepping on Legos was bad. Krieg tries to exit through his front door, but his wounds from the stair fall make it rather difficult. Sam crawls on the ceiling above Krieg, then drops down Rambo style for some wrestling. Once on the ground, Krieg pulls off Sam's mask, revealing his real face, which just so happens to be a pumpkin head. Sam bites the shit out of Krieg's leg, and Krieg sends Sam flying across the room with a shotgun blast to the face. Krieg gives Sam a few double taps, revealing Sam's innards are just the same as a pumpkin, with pumpkin seeds and goo spackling the walls. Sam recovers and puts back on his burlap mask, and pulls out his favorite weapon, the pumpkin lollipop. He takes a bite of it before rearing up to seemingly finish off Krieg. Bringing the lollipop down into a screaming Krieg, we see that Sam has pierced a candy bar. Since this is all that Sam wanted, he leaves Krieg alone and wanders back out of the house into the night, and even has the good manners to close the door behind him. In one final close-up of the fireplace, we see that Krieg was the bus driver from the Quarry story, and that's the main reason that he hates Halloween. Later, three little pigs knock on Krieg's door, hoping for some Halloween candy, and a battered and bruised Krieg happily hands candy out to them. He watches Sam as he goes towards Emma and Henry's house across the way, just as she's blowing out the candle from the beginning of the film. We then see Rhonda walking along the street, pulling her wagon absent-mindedly, and she is almost hit by a car carrying the werewolf girls laughing in human form. Billy Wilkins sits on his porch handing out candy to trick-or-treaters, wearing a costume that mimics his father's appearance from earlier, complete with glasses and bloody shirt, unaware that his father is dead. Krieg walks back inside his house, and the bell rings again. When he opens it this time, we see the children from the bus massacre standing on his porch. The boy with the vampire mask says trick-or-treat and extends his bag before the children all leap forward and begin to rip Krieg apart, all displayed in comic book form. And there you have it, 2007's Trick-or-Treat. The movie has become a fan favorite, and Sam is one of the most iconic horror characters to come out in recent history. The movie was a breath of fresh air amongst horror fans, as it didn't rely on constant jump scares, and instead showcased a lot of creative techniques to keep you scared throughout the film. Writer and director Michael Dougherty would go on to bring us X-Men Apocalypse, Krampus, and the next installment in the Godzilla series, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Michael has expressed that he wants to go back to the world of Trick-or-Treat one day and create a sequel. However, it's been in development for many years, and with all these large projects coming his way, who knows when that's going to happen. But hey, if we were willing to wait 2 years for this film to come out, what's the harm in waiting a few more years for a proper sequel, right? Join me next week where I'll be exploring something a little bit more romantic with 2001's Valentine, starring David Boreanaz and Denise Richards. Until then, I've been your host Matthew Bolton, and this has been Deep Cuts. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Deep Cuts. Trick-or-Treat has been one of my favorite films to cover on this series so far, with all of its gory goodness and comedic moments. I want to know in the comments below what your favorite kill was from the movie and what you would expect to see in Trick-or-Treat 2. Until then, stay screaming.